So now we're going to get going. There are a lot of people up on the rostrum. That's wonderful to talk about the film. But I'd like to start to introduce the people in the front row. An actress, Marie-Ange Geronimi, who is Corsican, who's done a lot of theater, and we've seen her in the cinema, and I think she deserves a round of applause. And now I'd like to introduce everyone who's up here at the rostrum. I'll start on the left with another person from the region, Cedric Appietto, who we saw in A Violent Life, and we've seen him in various productions. Virginie Ledoyen, who since Don Juan, when she was very young, has worked with Chabrol, Assayas, and the whole list of directors. I won't give the whole list. That would take up the entire press conference. To her right, Suzy Bemba, who is Jessica. She was in the horror film Condisha, and she's in an opera series as well. To her right, Esther Gohourou, her younger sister, Farah, who we saw in Mignon. You've all recognized Aissatou Diallo Sagna, who was in The Divide, the preceding film by Corsini, and who got a Caesar for that part. To her right, Lomane Dietrich, who was in Le Bal des Folles and other films in Cannes. To her right, Harold Orsini, who's a Corsican actor as well. Harold Orsini. And to my left, Elizabeth Perez, the producer of the film, with her company, Jazz Productions, and who produces and has produced Catherine Corsini's films since La Belle Saison. Summertime. And then we have Catherine Corsini in the middle. This is the third time she's had a film competing in Cannes. The first time it was 2001 with Replay, and 2 years ago, The Divide. And now she's here with Homecoming. You probably know that the film came to Cannes with surrounded by polemics. But the whole of the team answered, and for the last 48 hours there have been a number of positions which have been taken. Look at Lomane and other publications. They've all made statements, and what we'd like to know is to use this press conference to talk about the cinema. That's what we're here for in Cannes. We have a film here, and we're here to talk about the film. I will ask the first question, as is traditional, and then it will be up to you. The first question is for Catherine Corsini. My question is the following. After The Divide, what made you want to take up this project? In fact, I began to write the film with my co-screenwriter, who's not here, unfortunately, because she's also a DJ. She's a young screenwriter. We started to work together on the film, and with Nela, I hired her. She's a young screenwriter who's just graduated from Venice, and I wanted to talk about young people, so I thought maybe I was too old to do this, and I needed some fresh blood, someone younger. I was asking myself all sorts of questions. Elizabeth, who is my producer, and the person I live with has a son who's 20 years old now. I saw him grow up, And I was very keen to listen to how this young man had questions to ask about society. So I thought I would like to talk about youth in another film. I felt it was an unknown world for me because a lot of things have happened since my generation grew up. I also deeply wanted to film Corsica and to film in Corsica because for me it's a missing part. My father was Corsican. I wasn't raised in Corsica because my mother practically removed me from the island. I went there in the summer, but things were too painful. There were too many memories. And she presented me as sort of a mythical father who was like a guide, but it was a bit of a problem for me because I couldn't get rid of this very strong image. My father wanted to do the cinema, and it was very, very complicated. I tried to live up to his desires. So I had a very ambivalent feeling towards Corsica. My mother loved my father, but was very critical about Corsican society. So these are two things which are very mixed up together. And I thought, well, this is the stuff of a film. And then when I thought about the characters, I wanted to entrust the role of the mother to Aissatou Diallo Sagna, because I'd already worked with her. I know what the world of the cinema is like. It's a cruel world. It's a harsh world. And when you highlight someone, you sometimes give someone a second role and then forget them immediately afterwards. And I said to myself, this is someone I don't want to forget. And I think she's a wonderful actress. She's a nurse in my other film, and this was highlighted in the screen, and I knew that she could progress and evolve greatly. I sensed that, and therefore I said to her last year, well, I've written a role for you, here's the script. And we thought this is just the right person for the part. So I truly wanted her to be in the film, and I wanted her to play the part of a mother, my mother, in fact. So all these little streams came together and converged and turned into a film which talks about youth, about transmission, and Corsica, which was as unknown to me as youth. When I go back to Corsica, I feel that I'm a foreigner, yet I remember a lot about my roots there. So it's a real quest in my mind. A quest in terms of my father. He gave me this love of the cinema. I was very fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate at the time, when I was small. I had an LP, and I heard the voice of my father reciting a poem on that record. And when I discovered the record, I must have been 6 or 7 years old. I heard this beautiful melodic voice. I had imagined my father's voice as being something different, and there was such a wonderful Corsican accent in the poem. And when I hear Corsican accents, when I hear how they sing when they speak, in fact, I felt I wanted to portray this in a film. First question in the room.
I'm Judith Silva from Arise News, Nigeria. My question... Oh, sorry. Yeah? From Arise News, Nigeria. My first question is for... My only question is for Catherine Corsini. First of all, bravo. In the times we're living in now, there's a big conversation about access and diversity and giving directors and producers of color the same kind of opportunities. And lots of great films by great directors are retroactively getting criticized that should they have been directed by black directors, from Claire Denis' Chocolat to Color Purple and Amistad by Steven Spielberg. This film speaks to the uniqueness and nuances of the black sensibility and the black stories, particularly black women. What made you feel that you occupied a position to be custodian of such a story when you haven't lived the black experience yourself?
Good luck to you. Écoutez,
Well,
je sais. Merci déjà
Thank you.
Je prends ce que vous me dites comme un compliment.
I take what you said as a compliment.
Je sais pas comment répondre
I don't
vraiment à
know
cette
how
question.
I can really answer your question, though.
Je sais pas comment dire.
How can I put things?
Je sais pas. J'ai aimé Aissatou, donc c'est
I love
arrivé
Aissatou.
comme ça. C'est arrivé que comme c'était elle, voilà, c'était ses filles. C'est arrivé de.
And
Et puis,
I wanted to talk about her daughters.
Peut-être qu'il y a quelque chose qui m'apparaît
Maybe
aussi dans le
there's
cinéma.
something
On manque de représentation.
that strikes me in the cinema.
Aussi de diversité.
There isn't
Et que
perhaps
c'est
enough
quelque chose qui me
diversity,
tient à cœur parce que j'ai fait quand
and
même
this is
déjà
dear
beaucoup
to
de
my
films.
heart because I've
Et que
made a lot of films
j'adore
already,
tourner avec
and I
les
love
actrices avec lesquelles j'ai tourné.
making films with all the actresses that I chose, and I'll probably do more films with some of the actors and actresses. I felt I have a duty to bring in other faces, other personalities, other people. I'm deeply attached to Aissatou. These are things that happen in an instinctive fashion. She's here in this society, very mixed society in which we live. So I think it's important to tell Romanesque stories, stories where there are no stigmas. That's the power of the cinema, and I want all these actresses to be there. I don't make a whole issue about homosexuality or this kind of thing. These are just things that are part of us. I didn't want to feel that I was preaching a given stance. It's just the way I am. I love working with all these different people from different backgrounds, diversity. We're all together in France. There are all sorts of different faces of society today. There are thousands and thousands of different faces and facets, and these actresses are part of the film and these diverse faces that I wanted to film. I don't know whether I've given you a full answer.
Moi, je me dis que ça m'attriste toujours un petit peu d'entendre
I always
ce
feel
genre
sad a bit when I hear this kind of question, because of course we are progressing, we are better represented in French cinema today. But when will the time come when people cease to ask the question? That, in my mind, is when we'll really have taken a leap forward. We're all human beings. France is made up of people from all sorts of different races and mixed bloods, and that's the way things are.
La Corse vous salue, chère Catherine.
Hello, Catherine.
Pardon, média. Dire tout le bonheur qu'on a de vous voir ici.
It's wonderful to see you here. I very much enjoyed the film last night. The film is quite magnificent. It talks about Corsica, it talks about youth. What interests me is the way the film is filmed. You have this huge expanse, this open horizon, Corsica, yet this strong relationship with intimacy. The camera is very, very close to the characters. Could you explain to me why you made these choices? And thank you very much for the last scenes where there's a specific thanks given to Corsica and everyone seems to be happy and at ease with the final ending. Well, for Corsica, for me, is a character. It's a character with all its colors and its diversity. At the beginning, you have this Corsica you love, the Corsica of tourism, vacations, the beach. And then as the film unfolds, you can see that there is this power of the earth, of the land, which grasps the characters. So you have this, these fabulous landscapes that are sometimes mysterious and very powerful. You have this link between the various characters and the intimacy of the various characters. This is something you discover. In the summer, they discover their sexuality, love. It's something very, very physical. There's something physical in Corsica. It's an island which is sometimes very harsh with the mountains and these very powerful forces at play. And I wanted to film the kind of standard thing you imagine in Corsica, but I thought to myself, well, it shouldn't look like a picture postcard. That's why we chose this format, which is fairly intimate. The idea for the film was not to develop these images one has of Corsica, but to focus on things that are very simple and sober in order to include what's infinitely small. There's a scene which I like very much indeed. It's a very simple scene. It's when the two young girls kiss. And when we saw the set, well, we shot the scene as night fell with these rocks all around, and you have the impression that the rocks are part and parcel of the landscape, and the girls too. And they have this scene full of pleasure, which is so beautifully acted. The editor, when he discovered the rush for that scene, he said it's magical. And this magic comes from the acting, from this first kiss, this discovery, and also the surrounding landscape. You can see that the young girl portrayed by Lomane, she has quite a mythical first name, and she goes to pee, and there's something quite animal about the scene. That's what I wanted to show in these images. Corsica, for me, is always very mysterious, yet it's a film that talks about reconciliation within the family, reconciliation when it comes to secrets. Secrets and silence often do a lot of harm, and in Corsica, secrets and silence are part and parcel of Corsica. So the fact people come to talk together in Corsica, people find it very difficult often to talk together. There are families which have feuded and don't ever talk to each other again. So reconciliation is very important for me. What I love at the Cannes Festival is that you can see films from the entire world in a place, a haven of peace, where cultures are shared. And I think that's wonderful in Cannes. That's why as of the age of 21, 22, I love to come to Cannes. I came to Cannes to see films and more films.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Leila de Getty News. J'ai deux questions.
I have two questions.
La première sur le personnage de Farah.
The first concerns Farah.
Pour moi, j'ai vraiment eu l'impression qu'elle portait
I had the impression that she was the mainstay in the film. The character is so frank and sincere. What did you have in mind when you wrote this character? Particularly, she's so different from all the other characters in the film. And then I'd also like to talk about color, but from another stance. Throughout the film, I wondered about this. I said there must be something about all these sets. Farah asks her mother at one point, well, we're all so black, but we have a white father. And I thought is this part of the family history, rediscovering this secret? And I thought that might be part of the script, but then we realized that it isn't. That question is not developed in the course of the film. But it's a question one asks oneself when watching it. Farah, as a character, was created by Neila. I think she's very close. She was very close to the character when she was younger. And like Suzy, Suzy is very successful at school, yet she comes from a very modest background. There's a bit of me in all the characters, too. Maybe Esther would like to talk about her character. When I met Esther, in fact, I really fell in love with her. Esther turned up as saying, well, if it works out, fine. If it doesn't, so what? She just was amused at the idea of coming for an audition. I had never encountered someone who was so good. You give her a cue, and then she provides the beginning and the end. Usually, when an actor improvises, they never manage to finish the improvisation, but she always did, and she was quite outstanding. Also, in the dialogues of the film, they'd already been practically fully written by Leila. Esther always managed to portray this. She's extremely gifted. She always managed to bring things of her own into the scenes. All these little things were invented by her, and she made me laugh so much when she says on the set that she's really bad at school. Well, I thought this was probably true. And she added things which I thought were just stupendous, fantastic.
Merci déjà.
Well, thank you.
Déjà, merci. Et par rapport, comment dire, moi en vrai, ça n'a pas été difficile de jouer.
It wasn't difficult for me to play this part because the character resembles me.
Elle s'en fout, elle vit sa vie.
She doesn't care. She just goes about her life. If she wants to do something, she goes ahead and does it. If she doesn't want to do something, she doesn't. She's not afraid.
En vrai, c'était grave drôle de jouer. Moi, j'ai kiffé jouer phare.
I just loved the part. I thought it was brilliant. It was great.
Merci.
Et alors, sur la scène de la machine à laver...
And when you have the washing machine scene,
c'est la réponse que tu donnes dans le film, non?
The answer you give in terms of the color of the skin of your daughters, despite their father being white. I said, yes, it's not an exact science.
C'était aussi pour donner aussi une explication, parce qu'on a quand même
I had to give an explanation.
que mon défunt mari était blanc
We
et que
all
moi je suis
saw
noire, et
that
puis
my
ils sont quand même un peu
dead
plus foncés.
husband was white. I'm mixed blood. My children are a bit darker than I. And perhaps I thought that it would be important to answer a question the spectators would probably wonder about.
Yes, for Catherine Corsini.
It was also a way to show that this wasn't important. The actresses are wonderful, and families, well, it doesn't matter about color. You have families that are created and then are broken up. It doesn't really matter.
For director Catherine Corsini, there's been a lot of headlines about how intimate scenes were handled on this film, among other issues. If you were to do another film with similar themes, how would you handle it differently the next time around, as far as directing such intimate scenes?
Je me poserais peut-être encore plus précisément des questions, effectivement.
Maybe I would ask myself more questions.
Qui ont entraîné les actrices.
Intimacy coaches, for example, so that the actors or actresses feel happy. We did a lot of preparation for the scenes in any event. Maybe today
touchy ou tendu.
I now realize these are very
Je ferai effectivement appel à un
very
coach
important issues, and I might call upon an intimacy coach, as they're called. Maybe I was a bit too proud and pretentious. I said, well, I've got 30, 35 years experience. I can do things better than an intimacy coach. I've already shot a number of intimate scenes. Perhaps now I might indeed be more careful to ensure that the actresses felt fully at ease. I've made a lot of films. Sometimes you don't think enough about such issues.
Non, je suis pas d'accord.
No, I don't agree.
Enfin voilà, faut savoir que c'est quand même une scène que j'appréhendais un petit peu.
I was a bit afraid of the scene,
On était dans un cadre bienveillant. Il y avait
but
juste
everyone was very kind.
vraiment indispensable dans la pièce.
We had only the indispensable people in the room. We took the requisite time, Cedric and I, to work things out, and everything was very kind and gentle. It's a very intense scene from an emotional stance. We're not accustomed to seeing you like that in the cinema.
Well,
I have done a number of intimate scenes as an actor. I've done some pretty rough intimate scenes, and with Catherine, yes, indeed, everything was very gentle. There was a great deal of restraint. We talked about things a lot with Issa. We took our precautions. Everyone was very kind. In one of the scenes which was edited out, I was naked. Well, you're very handsome in the scene, but it was still edited out. It's the kind of scene which went very well for us, and it was a pleasure to be in that scene. Together with Aissatou, we felt very much at ease. We trust each other a great deal. Things worked out beautifully. There was no suffering or pain. Insofar as I'm concerned, and I think she feels the same. So I agree with Elizabeth. It's important to talk the matters over with the actor. The decision needs to be taken by the actors themselves and the director. In our case, there was no obligation whatsoever. I will certainly always ask the views of my actors in the future. We were asked whether we wanted an intimacy coach or not for the scene, and we said that we didn't feel it was necessary, and things worked out very well.
Suzy et Lomane, vous voulez nous dire un mot de cette
Suzy and Lomane, do you want to say something about this beautiful scene we were referring to earlier on, the first kiss? The love scene? The love scene in the car?
Moi, c'est-à-dire que j'avais fait que 2 autres scènes d'intimité dans d'autres projets.
I'd only done 2 other intimate scenes in other films. I haven't 35 years experience yet. But as I had worked with intimacy coaches in the past, I'd learned quite a lot, and I was able to apply what I learned here. We discussed matters with Catherine. Beforehand, we talked about what she wanted from the scene. We addressed some fairly precise points. I felt I needed to feel quite free. I didn't need a choreography. I didn't need something that was overly predefined, but I did need some fairly precise guidelines, things that were important for the overall story. I didn't feel I could improvise completely in this scene because it concerned my body, my own private life, which is something that's just my own. I needed an overall frame within which to act, though. Same for me. We talked matters over with Suzy when we knew we had to do this scene. We thought we needed to talk about what we could or could not do together. We talked the matters over with Catherine as well. And I agree on the need to have an overall framework. It depends on the people, is what Aissatou was saying. If the general frame isn't clear, then I feel in danger, because these are very powerful, intimate scenes. So I need to have a clearly defined framework, and then you can let yourself go within this framework. But I need it to be well defined, and then I need to work with someone whom I trust. In general, you have these very intimate scenes. How did you work on your characters? Was there a share of improvisation, or was the text very precise? Could you explain to us, each and every one of you, how you worked on your performance? Well, we rehearsed. I had 2 weeks of rehearsals in Paris. We worked with coaches and with Catherine on the text. Well, not even so much on the text. We worked mainly on different situations. We did a huge amount of improvisation in order to create links, a very close relationship before the actual shooting. And that enabled us, well, I know personally that this enabled me to imagine all sorts of things in terms of my character and her preceding life. I could thus create a link with Aissatou, with Esther and Lomane. And then on the set, there was a lot of improvisation during the rehearsals, but we then used what we'd done in the rehearsals. We were using what we'd already done. So that was a great gift, in fact. And it released us because we were able to do all this work beforehand, because the text became part of us. And I had to think things through much less when I was actually on the set. We had the text, we said the words we needed to say, but it had already become part of us. I wanted this family truly to exist. And I felt the more they work on things beforehand, the more they talk together, the more we work on the scenes. And I remember saying, oh, what they're doing is so fantastic. Will they be able to do as well when we're actually shooting the film? Because it was just so beautiful. I was afraid that things wouldn't be as good when we were actually shooting the film. So as you said, the idea was to create a real family, these strong links. And then this remained very real throughout the shooting of the film, without people being aware of it. A question for Virginie Ledoyen. Here you are, you were working with people who are less experienced actors or actresses than you. Is your approach differently? How did you view your role as a mother? Did you feel it was a sort of a mirror of the mother who was portrayed by Aissatou? No, not necessarily. First of all, the fact these young actresses didn't have much experience doesn't change much. The characters exist, they really became their characters, and I acted with them just as I act with actors who've been in 75 films. And they really, really espoused their character in the film. And that was wonderful. As to the couple we are with, Denis, Podalydes, for me, it's a film that really talks about youth. And the adults are sort of lost, left behind by the young people. They'd like to understand the codes, but they don't, in fact. So the adults are sort of completely out of it. And we didn't want to be a sort of counterweight to Aissatou, because the social class is totally different. The relationship is that of employee-employer. And that's inherent in the film.
le personnage à nous, alors qu'elle en a absolument besoin.
She cannot identify with us as characters, yet she, or vice versa, because we are totally distanced by our children. We don't understand them, comprehend them at all. Well, it's already finished. It's like a beautiful candy you give someone. It's already over. Congratulations on a wonderful film.